Welcome everybody to DLA Piper this morning. It's an exciting event, launching the compliance and ethics survey report of this year. I'm welcoming also our audience online, and just to let you know that people here, if you are going to have discussions with your neighbor, our mics will catch them to the recording and to the online audience. So please take that into account. So no secrets to be changed between yourself over there in the audience, unless you wish them to be revealed to the world. But welcome. I'm Salla Tuominen and hosting the event here on behalf of DLA Piper. Working as our head of corporate, working with M&A capital market transactions on a daily basis. Corporate governance is an important part of my work, and thus also, of course, these ethics related and compliance related matters. So today we will discuss about findings of the year of the report. And I believe once again we can note that the current market, current world is in a very interesting situation. Also, the compliance-related matters are somewhat evolving. The geopolitical situation, increasing regulation, all these matters reflect also to the compliance and ethics functions, and there will be some interesting findings in the report. And the report has been put together by the Nordic Business Ethics, and Nina and Anna and Sanna. And Nina is here with us today, and she will also go through a little bit more detail about the report before we start with the panel. And we have our speakers today, in addition to Nina. We have Markus Sprapp from UPM, Chief Compliance Officer, and Tarja Tudor from Metsä Group, Vice President, Compliance and Ethics. We didn't really plan to have a kind of a forest-related discussion, so perhaps we will stand out from there. But it's a good discussion, I'm sure, moderated by Nina. So without further words, I'll give the floor to Nina to start with the findings of the report as such. Please.
Great. Thank you, Salla, and thank you, DLA Piper, for once again providing this beautiful office for launching the Nordic Business Ethics Survey results. So very nice to see you all. Unfortunately, Anna couldn't join us physically, but she is mentally here with us. Also, Sanna is today participating in our European network of ethics and compliance officers, and she's on her way to Gibraltar. So I'm representing here the Nordic Business Ethics Initiative just on my own today. But I'm here very, very excited to share a bit about what the survey results actually look like. And this is actually the 7th year we have conducted together with Anna the survey for the ethics and compliance profession in the Nordics. And already 7 years back, our mission was to create something that is useful, something that the ethics and compliance officers can utilize in their work when they want to learn how other companies are doing these things, where we should look next, and how is the whole profession shaping up. And I think I'm especially proud of this year's report because I can really feel that the network that we have been together building all these years has really given their best effort to share from your experience and from your understanding on what the ethics and compliance means in 2025. So it's really truth is that we wouldn't exist without the network, and this report would not be launched without the network. So I want to give personal thanks to all of those 145 ethics and compliance leaders who have taken the time to respond to our survey, and also to those 14 individuals who said yes when we asked that, would you like to sit down with me and Anna to have a more in-depth discussion on how you see the work of ethics and compliance evolving in today's rapidly evolving environment, and where is this whole profession leading to. So in this report that we are going to publish in 30 minutes, we will be sharing both of the statistics from this survey, but also the reflections from these interviews. And I'm really looking forward to starting the discussion here in Helsinki when we are really launching the results, and having also the global audience us in virtually. And next year we will continue the conversation in our Nordic tour, together with our co-host in Copenhagen, in Oslo, and in Stockholm. And also at this point, very special thanks to all of the sponsors who have been providing us your support for actually enabling collecting this data and publishing this very beautiful report that you're going to see shortly. So FRA and LRN, I know you're there in the back seats. So big thanks for all your support, your continued support over the years with the Nordic Business Ethics Network. But before I go into the actual what we found in this survey, let me tell a little bit who were actually the respondents. So I think many of you here today, online and in person, you got the message from me or Anna or from the NBE mailing list, and we asked you to spend a while to respond to a survey. So this is now the survey that you responded back in a couple of months ago. So we got in altogether these 145 responses representing the Nordic capitals. So 95% of all the responses we have are from the ethics and compliance leaders who work in organizations who has their headquarters in the Nordic countries. And this year, for a reason or another, Sweden got that kind of number one place here. So we got most of the responses from Sweden. So big thanks to Sweden. But Finland was there, right behind. And also we got 24% of the results from Norway. Unfortunately, from Denmark, we only got 8% of the responses. And that's why when you're going to read the report, you can see there are country comparisons between Norway, Finland, and Sweden. Next year, we hope we will get enough responses also from Denmark so that we can include that as well. But yeah, so it's very Nordic-based report representing how the leaders in ethics and compliance perceive the world and their profession at the moment. But then how does the results look like? So I'm going to give the report itself is 70 plus pages, so no worries. I will not go through all of them, but I really hope that maybe this short introduction to the report and its insights will motivate you to open the report and use the data, use the information to build your own compliance programs and to take them in the next level, and really just to engage in conversations with the people around you. And those who have responded to the survey, there are a lot of very, very basic questions like, do you have a code of conduct? Yes, 98% said yes. But then there are also more advanced questions like, what is your budget, or how much do you have whistleblowing cases, and what type of cases those are? Or then at the end, are you satisfied with your role, and would you recommend this position to a colleague? So we hope by getting this broad spectrum of three different type of questions and aspects of the ethics and compliance work will help you in all the possible ways in doing the benchmark, understanding from each other, and keeping up the good conversation on what this profession is all about. But it was a very difficult task for me and Anna to really look at these 74 pages of data and think that, okay, what do we want to say about this data? But I have here now 6 points that we also published in the report as the key takeaways. By no means this is the kind of ultimate truth of how the ethics and compliance looks like. But these were the things that we found interesting when we were both analyzing the interviews and the survey responses. And I guess the first point here is the most interesting one, and something probably that all of us who work in this field have been thinking recently. And there we have, we talk in the report, or we use the term from culture to compliance. And there we mean that when we have these conversations with ethics and compliance people, we hear a lot of thinking on the broader role of ethics and compliance in today's world. If I personally think about 10 years ago when I used to be an ethics and compliance officer, I think my role there in this corporation was very much based on the values and the code of conduct. My job was not to follow the regulation or ensure that the company actually followed all the possible regulations. I had their support in other teams, and I think that this has been very basic thing even for many Nordic ethics and compliance programs, that we have had the power and the possibility and the great opportunity to not build on purely the legal compliance, but really to focus on ethical decision making, code of conduct, and creating an organizations where we don't just look what the law says, but we look beyond that. I think how we can build responsible organizations in a long term. And it's very interesting that now when we talk with people, many say that actually because of this whole environment we are living in, we get a lot of pressure, a lot of tasks, a lot of requests on this matter that are very pure core or hard compliance related. We need to follow up with the legislation much more than we used to have. We have also a lot of requirements coming from purely from the legislation that we need to be able to meet for us to do the job as a compliance officer. So many describe this shift from really actually going back more to this technical and hard compliance, which is very interesting because we all know that the heart of ethics and compliance is really in going beyond the legislation. And it's not very easy because we hear also that many boards and many senior leaders are asking questions that, like, what is the minimum requirement? What does the law say? And we know that that answering these questions does not give all the best possible solutions. So we are really in a position with this profession where we need to redefine who we are and what is the role between ethics and compliance and how we do our work effectively. This is a question I'm really looking forward to have in all of our launch events. Well, then moving forward, the second element we wanted to bring up here is actually the resources. Already, I think last time when we published the report, we discussed that on general in Nordic organizations, the resources are quite restricted, and we have low budgets, small teams, and that's how it is, especially in those areas where we don't have this very highly regulated environment. And this is also something that I think that the ethics and compliance teams in Nordics have been able to build on, not to have 100 people in the team, but really to focus on how do I do my job. And I think still it's a good question, even with the one team of ethics and compliance person in our report, it doesn't mean that the work would not be impactful, and it doesn't mean that this one person would not be able to utilize the expertise of their colleagues in building an effective compliance program. But what we can see from the report, if we look, for example, the question on how does the future look like in terms of growing the team. 2 years ago, we had almost half of the people saying that, yes, I'm going to recruit over the next 12 to 18 months, and now we have only half of that amount. So really the resources are getting tighter. And at the same time, we have less resources or more tightened resources, more legislation, more demands coming from towards the organizations. And then we have the AI and the role of technology. So many compliance people are really also thinking at the moment, how can we use AI in order to be effective? In our survey, it was very interesting. Like a very basic thing for ethics and compliance seems to be to utilize these different type of AI tools for the ordinary work, but in a more strategic way, thinking about, for example, how we can use AI for automation or analytics or supporting decision making. Less than 10% of the respondents said that they are on this path already. So really looking forward for a discussion also around the technology and AI. Then if we go to the next half of these results, I think all of us who work in the ethics and compliance knows and feels that the actual visible part of our work is really how we engage people, how we train, how we communicate, how we build on the cultural development, and what type of a conversation we have around business ethics. And there, we of course in our survey have the basic questions like, do you have your mandatory code of conduct e-learnings? And yes, most of the people do have that. But what we found interesting was that when we look at the country-specific answers, Sweden was definitely the winner in terms of ethical leadership type of learning programs. So most of the Swedish companies had some type of program for the leaders. And I happen to know that we have really great examples in Sweden of the companies who really invest in responsible leadership programs. And for sure, this is something that makes the compliance and ethics work very meaningful when we don't just talk about mandatory e-learnings, but we take it on the very high level in the organization and enable and push people to think on how the ethics and compliance really is embedded in our own decision making and thinking. Norway, on the other hand, was the winner in all of these dilemma-based workshops. So there we saw that Norwegian companies had much more this workshop style training in use. Unfortunately, Finland was kind of lagging behind in all of these training elements that goes beyond the mandatory e-learnings. Then two remaining points. One is something we discussed already 2 years ago. So what is the role of ethics and compliance and sustainability? And there we had a question again asking like, how much are you integrated with ethics and compliance and sustainability? And we got a broad spectrum of different levels of integration. 9% said that no, we have nothing to do with the sustainability people. But interestingly, some of these ethics and compliance officers who said that, ethics and compliance is here and sustainability here, and we have nothing to do with each other, also said that actually, for example, human rights is a topic that actually belongs to ethics and compliance and not to the sustainability, whereas in some places, this topic of human rights and the whole corporate sustainability due diligence directive conversation has been the one driving force in bringing these teams closer together. So it's also actually a very good question on how we define sustainability, how we define ethics and compliance, because companies do define these teams and their kind of a playing field in various ways. And the last point from our survey is really maybe looking at the future of ethics and compliance. Having said all of this, the evolving role of legislation, the coming pressure from various directions, the need to be technically oriented and provide really technical support in ensuring the compliance in the world, in the companies, and also taking consideration the role of technology and AI. This leaves the ethics and compliance profession with a very good questions. How do I make myself relevant in today's world? For sure, we all agree that we are needed now more than ever, but what is our role? What is our purpose? how do we take our place in the organization is the question I want to discuss today with all of you here. And I think this is a great way to also introduce and invite our guests to the stage. So please, let's dig into the results of the survey and start the conversation. Yes, you can share the mic. So let's see who gets the first question. So, Paula, Markus, and Talia, thank you for joining us this morning. And we also gave you a small pre-task to take a look at the report before it's published. And I'm not expecting that all of you have written it thoroughly, even though Markus found one mistake from there. Thank you for that. But maybe my first question is that what are your overall reflections when you read or reviewed the report? Was there something particular that you found that was interesting or worth sharing here today with this audience? Who wants to start? Talia wants to start.
I can start. Hey, good morning, everyone. There are many interesting points for sure, but first of all, I would say that the first observation you had also in your key findings was something that was relevant for me. So I've been thinking and noticing that yes, the role of regulatory compliance has increased, but and maybe the kind of need for ethics and value-based trainings and talks, I've seen less of that, maybe. But I didn't know that my colleagues are also seeing that across the organization. So this was something that it was important to and also justifies the need to have this type of surveys, because it would bring out the underlying trends that you wouldn't know as a compliance officer working in one organization. So I think for me that was one of the key findings.
Yeah, well, that's an important thought. Thank you, Talia. Markus, how about you?
Good morning, everyone. I found particularly interesting, I think, this resource scarcity question, because I think Nordic companies traditionally have been fairly slimly resourced on the compliance side. We have not built big departments, but looking at the world today, a few years back, we see a kind of a regulatory landslide, and the work goes into kind of looking into those laws and how to comply with them. So I think from that perspective, it's fairly interesting that still we don't see a big shift in at least increasing the resources. And also, even I think if I read the report correctly, I think like a quarter of the large companies still have less than 100,000 euro kind of budgets, which is kind of quite striking in my view. Of course, if you have a big internal resources, then of course you don't need to buy so much from external service providers, but still I think it is fairly striking.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the things we discussed already 2 years ago, and compared to, for example, US or many other regions, we are not there, with the biggest budget and biggest teams, which on the other hand can also be advantage when you need to be focused on where you put your efforts to. How about Sala, what did you find interesting?
I think for me the most insightful parts were where we were discussing about use of AI, and as it's such a big topic at the moment, as we all know, I mean it's everywhere, and how it's really used in connection with compliance, and of course it's a natural thing that also is coming into the field of compliance. And then perhaps another one, ESG related matters always interests me, and we know what kind of I don't know how to define current situation with ESG regulation and the mess which has been created by the politicians. So at the same time, we all the companies have the pressure from stakeholders and various stakeholders to build on it and so on. So I mean, the ethics and compliance functions are following up and doing the work and of course in a kind of very different environment just this year compared, for example, to the last year. So I think that those insights were also interesting.
Glad to hear. Yeah. So a lot of interesting topics, and I'm glad all of you brought those topics that was also on my agenda. So let's dig a little bit deeper this first question about the role of ethics and compliance and the kind of ethics versus compliance and being a relevant compliance officer in a world where we have this, the legislation is evolving and we are going back and forth, whether we should even regulate or not. And we have these questions coming in more often than we thought, that we already kind of pass away, that what is the minimum requirement. I think it's depressing that the boards are asking questions like, how do we do the minimum? Let's do nothing additional. And yet we know that the kind of effective compliance cannot even be built on what does the law say, because we can't build the processes in organization just based on legal requirement, because we know that in the gray zone, and if we look at, for example, the companies, just as this week we read in Finland of this one scandal where it's not about law, it's about you as a CEO saying the wrong things in the wrong place and showing up what is your appreciation towards your employees. So we need this ethical thinking, we need reflection on what's actually right, what's actually building the long-term value in the organization. So where do you see that the role of ethics and compliance is on this whole zone? I just want to start.
Yeah, well, I think I don't see basically ethics and compliance being kind of opposing powers, in a sense that they complete each other. And I have a very kind of difficult time seeing that we would kind of leave ethics out of the picture. I think at the same time, I think that compliance is important, especially in times like these where you have new regulation coming in. We need to assist the organization to meet those requirements, and that helps us maybe kind of in the short term, that now we are okay with this law, but then ethics I think serves or protects the company in the long term. Mm-hmm. And it also helps them because there's always ambiguity in interpretation of law and so forth, and that's where the ethics comes into play. So I see them more like going hand in hand. I have not kind of personally experienced this sort of shift yet, at least. I'm more fortunate in that sense, but definitely I think that even though there would not be kind of a push from the management that you need to kind of more focus only on the minimum requirements, effectively you have your resources and you have these kind of new regulations, so you need to kind of prioritize where you put your effort. So therefore maybe there has been a little bit of a shift towards this sort of how to manage this landslide, and there the politicians are not making our life easier with, just as an example, the EUDR kind of chaos is just ridiculous, kind of what's going on there.
Yeah, to be fair, the minimum requirement isn't always, it's a lot of work as well in many cases.
Yeah, the EUDR is a great example, I think, all in all. Yes, I fully agree actually with what Markus was saying. So maybe the question is that, is this now this kind of tension between compliance and ethics? Is it about the change in tone in the conversation, that the management is requiring only the kind of minimum and that type of talk? Or is it due to the kind of small limited resources that the compliance teams have and the increasing amount of regulation that is pushing the kind of compliance and ethics into doing the regulatory compliance work? But I do recognize when I talk to my colleagues in town, I can see that there is a shift for sure. And now, of course, the kind of the discussion environment, all in all, in the society has changed for sure. So that's affecting also the ethical part. So maybe the what is seen as ethical is not so commonly defined anymore, and there's more variation in the discussion also in the Nordics.
Yeah, that's true. If we globally think about the world politics, what is the right thing to do? We don't have one answer for that. Sure. Paula, how about you? You discuss this matter, and we meet a lot of different companies. Do you see this shift in your work?
Yeah, yes and no. To some extent, of course, our approach is quite often the legal approach. So perhaps the emphasis is then on the legal side. But of course, I mean, it's only the basis, and then builds up on the ethics, and that needs to be taken into account. What I think, and I think Nina, you also referred to it in your introductory regarding the report about how the Nordic companies are quite or are typically kind of a value driven companies, and I think that it is actually a very good point and advancements to the Nordic companies compared to perhaps to somewhere else, as it's already built into the company, and I mean then you build on that and top that with I mean the regulatory requirements and all that. And I also think that the role of the board of directors is or at least should be very important also in defining these matters. It's not just that, as we have mentioned here many times, that it's not just that meeting the minimum requirements from the law, but it's about integrity and fairness and doing things right. So there we of course come back to this kind of a shift or even if we would need to think about are there kind of differences or should we make some sort of a difference in between there. But yeah, I think that the kind of the Nordic companies value-driven approach is an advantage.
Yes, and it will remain to be, even though we are having a little bit mixed feelings. And I was also thinking that maybe the question on what is the minimum requirement is a valid question in many occasions, because we didn't used to have that regulation and it didn't used to be so complex. So maybe the boards just want to also understand that, what needs to be changed. And then we can think, what do we do additionally? But I think this is a very broad topic, and I'm sure the audience has also very good questions on this. Anywhere here in the room in Helsinki you want to reflect your own thoughts or ask something from our professionals? Any questions on the line? Not yet. Yeah, feel free to share your questions in the chat. So we'll definitely take those. Good. But yeah, so let me move on into the resourcing part. So Markus, you also mentioned that you found this very interesting, and as said, that's how we've always had a reputation in Nordics. We are value based and we low resource, so we don't have big ethics and compliance teams. 70% have fewer than 5 employees, and over half operate with less than 100K external budgets. And the expectations to increase the resources just went down from 43 to 23, so meaning that we are in a kind of limited resources. But how can the ethics and compliance teams be effective with this fact that the resources are always limited?
Yeah, I think looking at the report again, it's of course difficult to always be sure whether we compare apples to apples because of the, let's say, the scope of the programs differ between companies, that what's included in the compliance and ethics and what's not. But still, I think that we are not used to this sort of kind of US style big organizations. So where we are slim on resources in the Nordic companies, I think the emphasis goes into how to utilize basically your colleagues. Even if you're a sole kind of responsible for the compliance and ethics, then you need to kind of partner up with really leverage your time with the senior management to make them understand that if I don't have the resources, then how do we utilize effectively the resources of the company? And basically then, because it may be difficult for you to just go in and say that now you need to take this additional task, but make it a common cause of the company and leverage on the kind of the broader organization. I think that's a key. Even if you have your own resources, that's kind of how do you make the organization champion your cause and make it basically a company cause, so to say. Then of course I think prioritization is the key to everything. That how do you take a risk-based approach and focus on what's really relevant. And there of course then we come into the field of technology and how that can assist and so forth. But I think even with the technology part, we always think at UPM, for example, that we should have a scalable platform basically that and their technology comes into play. But it is kind of very difficult to implement technology to assist you, even if you are kind of a smaller team. So there's a kind of the contradiction that you should deploy technology to assist you, but then you don't really have the resources to kind of implement it. So again, you need to either rely on your colleagues or then you just can't take that lead. Maybe AI will be the kind of the topic that will bridge this gap, but still I'm still a little bit hesitant whether even with AI it's not that easy, to implement these sort of technologies to support it.
Definitely.
Yes, if I go a little bit back to the kind of limited resources and the ethics under pressure type of situation, I guess my message to you is that I think it's okay if at the moment the limited resources of the of your ethics and compliance team are used in regulatory compliance for now, for a while. That's okay. I do believe that most companies who have more mature ethics and compliance programs have been doing this value-based leadership training and value-based trainings for quite some time. So that will kind of carry you, I believe, for some time. And when then financially the times are better, maybe the regulatory environment will be less complex. I don't know, will it be, but perhaps there will be some clarity nevertheless. So then it's time to kind of reintroduce these ethics trainings. So, it doesn't matter if you, for the next 6 months, don't have the resources to do your ethics trainings. If you have been doing the diligent work in the previous years, that will carry you over the difficult times.
Thank you for saying that aloud. I'm sure many feel relieved now. Yeah. So what about you? You have some good thoughts for the resourcing part.
Well, we of course see many of our clients struggling with limited resources, and I think it is a reality.
That's why they need you.
Well, that's just going to say that it's I will need to be careful how I'm putting my words here, but I mean, thinking about especially small and mid-sized companies and the kind of the flow of regulation. I mean, you will need to take care of starting from kind of anti-bribery, anti-money laundering, antitrust, other competition law related matters. You have AI regulation, which is now heavily coming up. You have product related regulation. I mean, you name it. It's such a huge and broad spectrum of all kinds of regulation which needs to be followed and understood how it's handled in the companies. I mean, I do feel the kind of the headache at the companies to be able to do that. And of course, we can help to some extent. For example, during the last already 7-8 years, I mean, data protection has been one of the very large kind of areas where companies have wanted and needed a lot of help. And we do not yet have seen a company which is fully compliant. But perhaps getting back to Tarja's comment that it's okay. I mean, in that sense that of course you will need to have the priorities in place and at least do try to get to the minimum level and then add up on that. And it's about risk management really. What are the most important things from what perspective? Is it a reputational risk or some other risks, financial risks, or what are you needing to first concentrate on? So we see that on a daily basis with of course with our clients.
Thank you, Salla. Any thoughts from the audience or from the line? Yes.
Good morning. I'm from Bangladesh, and actually I'm not sure how my question will be relevant to this session, but I am a student at Dhaka University of Applied Science. I have recently arrived in Finland. So regarding the compliance and sustainability issue and ethical issues, I'm in apparel and garments business for the last 20 years, and I have seen that my Nordic customers, they are very much concerned about the compliance issues. But here in my countries, profit is the main key sometimes, because Bangladesh. And sometimes my customers are very much happy with BSA report or something like that, but sometimes those are fabricated also. That's not purely connected to the requirement. So my question is to you actually, how you are planning to bridge this actually, how you are planning to mitigate this type of issues, or how ventures can be taken to get actual compliance report from my countries, or actual, how our countries can be ethically sustainable, garments factories or other organizations. This was my question. Thank you.
Thanks for the question. Anyone wants to say
I
something?
think at least reflecting on our company, that how do we ensure the global compliance on a global scale and with our supply chains. Of course, it's a huge challenge that the further you go down into the chain, how do you ensure everything happens accordingly? But at least you need to have a certain global standard that you try to implement and emphasize, and that at least we document in the supplier and third-party code, where we put some requirements. Then we have additional guidance to the suppliers, and we encourage them basically to promote it further in the supply chains and so forth. But of course, recognizing that it is a kind of key challenge how to really kind of navigate that risk, and it's not an easy task. I don't have a kind of a clear answer, but it's constant work in the supply chain, and yeah, that's how I see it.
Thank you, Markus. Tarja, Salla, anything to complement for this?
I believe we are all in the same situation. It is tricky, and of course, what you are seeing is what we see on paper: supplier code of conduct, we do compliance screenings. We check on paper that everything is okay and there's no previous convictions or problems with the suppliers. But of course, the reality may be very different. Something may be revealed with audits, kind of on-site audits, but still. Of course, even that is important to understand that if a company is auditing another one, there is a kind of pressure to make everything look very nice and pretty for the duration of the audit, and what is then the reality might be very different. Still, everything might look okay on paper, but then the real experiences of the people in terms of human rights and so on can be very, very bad indeed, even if things look okay on paper. So no, I don't have an answer either.
But thank you for the important question, and I think it all goes back to our previous questions on soft law coming hard law, and the whole reason why we even have started to regulate sustainability in the first place, because the problem is that until now, companies have been able to say that, I don't have the visibility because I haven't had the, minimum requirement legal obligation to do that. And we've just had to deal with this uncertainty that, okay, we do all these things that were listed here, but it doesn't make us to see all throughout the value chain to the actual impact that we have. And if someone has a perfect solution on how to how to fix this today, so the mic is here. Excellent questions, and we are very happy to take further questions as well, or reflections from the audience. Okay, while you are thinking about your good questions, we can move on to the next topic, which is the training and awareness part. We know that this is and always has been one of those very basic elements of ethics and compliance programs, how we actually kind of bring these topics into the actual reality and how we introduce this to the organization and beyond. And interestingly, Tarja, you just referred also to this kind of current situations where I think many Nordic companies have done a really great job in building these ethical awareness campaigns and building the ethics training programs, and now perhaps we are losing some of that space to do that because all the other things we need to do. But what are generally your reflection on this topic of training, and maybe on this how we should, with these limited resources in today's world, how we should focus the training efforts and also live with the fact that still we are expected to provide these mandatory e-learnings that we can report and give the statistics, knowing at the same time that these e-learnings many times simplify things and ignores the fact that it's a gray zone where we don't have this right and wrong, clear black and white solutions, but it's more like a nuanced reality, and we should be the ones enabling the conversation instead of giving these right or wrong answers.
That's a broad question, but I will give it a go. So first of all, I have seen that it's been important actually then to measure the realization of ethics in the organization. By doing that, you know what is relevant for the employees. Because otherwise, I'm assuming that my compliance and ethics topics are really relevant for others, which is always not the case. But there could be something more cooking in the organization that is more relevant from ethical perspective. So what we have done at Metsä Group, we have measured already for several years. We've done this ethics survey for the whole personnel, and that has been actually a key way to find out what is relevant in that particular time period for the personnel in terms of training agendas. So without that, I think we would have not done some of the great things we have done in our value-based learnings. And then to kind of add to that, so I think you can also make the compulsory e-learnings interesting. And yes, you can kind of introduce the gray zone into that as well. You do need to simplify for sure. But then we've had, for example, acted videos which have these ethical dilemmas in there. So we have real actors in the kind of e-learning videos. We've done testimonial videos where our people kind of confess something from their past and say that I should have done things differently, and kind of then open up the kind of the gray zone. And also showing the vulnerability of people in the sense that I may look like the perfect business leader today, but there are things in the past that have affected my growing up into this leader.
Wow.
As an example.
Yeah, for sharing. Yeah. That sounds amazing. Yeah, and we are big fans of your ethics service. We know you do wonderful work. Thanks. Yeah, Markus, how about you?
Yeah, I think a comprehensive sort of communication and training plan is key to kind of think about the target groups, how do you address them. And I do think that even though we kind of maybe think that mandatory trainings are sort of a must-have, but I think, as Tarja said, that you can make them interesting. And we continue to receive kind of good feedback on our training programs, and we are even surprised by people coming up to us and thanking for them. You kind of assume that people think they are a real burden. And that keeps kind of encouraging us to do them as long as we kind of renew them on a continuous basis, and we use these sort of real case anonymized incidents from the company in these sort of training platforms, which make them more relatable for employees. That it's actually something that may have happened in the company that we address. And then, of course, the trainings are something you need to kind of cover the masses, and then with a focused face-to-face training. So those are, of course, more impactful, but also require much more resources to do. And we also have this sort of, let's say, team discussion ethical dilemma platform that we have created also with real cases from the company. And there the managers can utilize that to discuss in the team, so it doesn't kind of require the presence of the compliance. So that's just a few examples of what you can do to kind of make it more interesting and relatable.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. And if we think about the maturity, I'm sure that we have here too, like leading examples of how you can make it impactful. But it does require a lot of work and time to really think how I make it meaningful, how I'm using the data and the past incidents and the vulnerability of your leaders in order to make this. I think these are great examples. You should all implement these. How many of you here does the same? Put people in front of camera and ask them, what are your biggest failures? I think it's, wonderful examples. We should definitely learn from these. Sala, any thoughts on how you on this topic?
Good comments. I agree with everything. I'm a big fan of kind of having things in practice, and I think these kind of examples are very important. Sometimes these matters we try to train personnel might be a little distant, at least some part of the personnel. So it really needs to be kind of a concrete examples. And one thing which might be missing is explaining why. And it's really important that people understand that we are not once again doing this just because of ticking the box of because of the legal requirement, but there are more depth, more important reasons why these trainings are arranged and why it's important that everybody understand what it is, what are we doing. So the question why is really important.
That is, definitely fully agree. And maybe here in the end, I want to share a story. I just had a lunch a couple of weeks back with one of the leading ethics and compliance professionals in Finland, and she told me that they've had tough times and basically zero budget. And I think the story she told me was a perfect example that when you actually get, you have no money, you have no resources, you gotta use your own brain and your own organization on thinking how I make myself relevant and how do I still, address these topics. And she had really inspiring examples how they used like their IT department and their HR department in really building like very interesting video content, and really they had a brilliant ethics and compliance week with zero budget. And by just utilizing the people's willingness to actually invest their time and thoughts on building the ethics and compliance program. And I think this is so important, and sometimes we undermine how much value actually people might perceive when they are being asked that could you perhaps help me in creating this whatever video scheme or podcast or something, and you might find from your organizations really talented people who can support, and that if something creates also the spirit in the organization. Just wanted to share that before digging into the world of technology and AI. So definitely, as discussed already in many comments, this is a topic that is on the table. It's impacting in various ways in the job of a compliance officer. On one way, we need to be there to understand how this regulation is impacting the way how we utilize technology and AI, and on the other hand, how we can utilize that as teams and in our work in order to bring value and help our companies to make good decisions. So any thoughts from any of you on this very important role of technology and AI?
Well, if I start with commenting shortly that it is, of course, great tool, but as we know, it's just a tool. But of course, it can assist in screening, let's say, many of the very kind of everyday functions, sanction screening or anti-money laundering screening, contract review. All that will help. But then it needs to be kept in mind that then we might face also other challenges, and there we face the data protection issues. Bias. AI is not free of bias. All these kind of things, and I'm always talking about ethics and AI, and let's not go into too much into that. But I mean, there at the same time, once again, it's a helpful tool and kind of a beneficial and positive as such. We need to keep in mind that it needs some compliance itself. So kind of a two-run way in that sense.
Definitely.
Yeah, I see a lot of opportunity in technology connection with compliance, and especially where areas where you have kind of data intensive, kind of high volume data, like transactional monitoring, basically money transactions. Currently, compliance departments do a lot of kind of historical audits, going back and looking at transactions from the past 3 years maybe, and then uncover some. It's a lot of manual work. Their technology can help. Maybe in the future it can be more like on real-time monitoring, that it flags basically when a transaction is about to happen, and then alerts the compliance team, so you can focus your efforts much more into the real issues. Another maybe high volume is, as Salla mentioned, kind of counterparty screenings. We have implemented automation there to do the screenings, but then of course there's a lot of noise, which you can't. The bottleneck is now the human factors. That how can you basically look at all the red flags? So you need to calibrate pretty kind of high currently, and so the AI could be the middle layer there, looking at all the kind of noise that you are not able to kind of tackle with human interaction. And then of course there's an experience factor kind of in trainings. You are probably able in the future to make much more modularized and specific to role trainings, and maybe if we go really in the future, maybe you will have your own kind of compliance avatar whispering to your ear all the time how you should behave, and then we don't need the trainings at all, basically, because you have your guidance there. But I think there are many kind of efficiencies you are able to do also for the team itself, kind of how do you do risk assessments and so forth. But a lot of opportunity I see there. Of course, it's still, I think you should not underestimate the challenge to implement those. It takes resources as well. But if you are kind of successful in it, maybe you should not either shy away from kind of exploring into the technology, because it will release some of your time then into really doing the strategic work and to be a kind of a strategic advisor to the business around that topic. So remaining the human in the loop, so to say.
Yeah, definitely. Final words from
Yes,
Maria.
I fully agree with that. It's important to have an open mind, and there will be a shift. We just don't know yet how will that look like in concrete terms. But yes, the role of ethics and compliance as a kind of organizational gatekeeper, making sure that the use of AI is ethical and secure. That's one. And then of course our own use of AI in our own work. That's what Markus was referring to. And another example that comes to my mind, in addition to what you just said, is perhaps where we have seen that there is some volume, is the supplier code of conducts that our customers are sending to us as their suppliers. So then kind of as a kind of low-key AI tip, creating these AI agents to when you put a certain set of data in, and then it will kind of detect if there is something that you don't want to be included in that supplier code of conduct. And of course now with the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive, when one day that will be a reality, then of course there are certain contractual assurances that are required in the supply chain or in the value chain. So that is maybe something that I'm predicting that there will be an increase in the supplier code of conduct coming our way. And then what is the interplay between the supplier code of conduct and then these new contractual assurances that are required by the CSDDD. So maybe there will be some volume.
Yes, very interesting reflections. How about audience? Do we have some great examples, inspiration on how you utilize technology or AI in the ethics and compliance world? Anyone just want to share? Okay, so we have two important topics left to cover, and one of them is the ethics and compliance integration to sustainability. So, as said, this is not a simple question to ask whether these are synchronized or not, because like Markus said, we all define the ethics and compliance programs in our own way, and for example, in Norway, most of the companies, because they have this Transparency Act, that human rights has been for years in the ethics and compliance field, not in the sustainability. So it's interesting how we even interpret these terms and how we build the teams. But any thoughts on this topic from any one of you?
Well, I can start. Briefly, we have not done such integration at Metsä on a kind of organizational level as such. I would say that the sustainability team and its members are one of my closest colleagues, for sure, in reality, and the ESG, especially the S and the G, are definitely relevant for compliance and ethics. I personally, before the EUDR, tried to stay clear from the environmental part of the compliance and sustainability, but now that has also kind of landed on my table partially. But I see great possibilities, and I don't really see that it's necessary to combine the functions. It is possible, and I'm sure there are certain companies who have done that successfully, and it's worked for them. But I don't see it as a must to combine these two functions. It is a kind of matter of organizational structures and wishes. But close cooperation definitely is something that I can see in the future and already now.
Yeah, I'm very much on the same line with Tarja here. We have not organized under the same function. We have separate functions, but they are probably our best kind of cooperation partners. Our responsibility head once told me that nowadays you are our best friends because we have nowadays a common cause basically. Maybe in the past it used to be more kind of differing goals, I would say. Now it's pretty aligned, and we work closely together on the kind of sustainability reporting, human rights, supply chain responsibility, and environmental side as well. So there's a tight cooperation. I don't see it necessarily that it needs to be under the same roof, but it can bring synergies as well. But I think maybe going back to this previous years and the current geopolitical situation and the shift in how the world sees ethics and sustainability. I think the sustainability team or organization has been under more pressure than the compliance and ethics in recent year on a global scale. That I think the pushback is much more visible there. That especially due to the developments we see in the US. So there, I think what actually we can be of help to the sustainability team to actually justify their cause as well and to support it. So.
Okay, interesting. My phone is somehow coming to this iPad. Thank you. Thank you, Markus, for sharing. And I think that's a brilliant point that you bring up on the pressure of the sustainability teams and how we can also support there. So, Salla, final reflections on this topic from your end. You work with both of these customer ends, I guess.
Right. I don't have either a firm opinion whether combined or not, and we see it currently perhaps more often be as separate functions. And of course, during the last few years, there is a lot of emphasis on ESG, especially with larger companies and so on, and perhaps more question marks from the smaller companies. And how do we actually organize ourselves in order to have a kind of an ESG compliance in place? So that's what we have at least been discussing with many of the clients, that where to start, what we would need to do, also on organizational wise, that how should we do it, and whether a kind of a separate function is really needed, or is it just someone taking it beside the other tasks and so on. So it's been kind of evolving, and of course the larger companies, what you also both represent, it's perhaps been more clearer and already also for many years in place. So it has been nothing so new, but for the smaller companies, it has been a kind of a starting point, and so on. So I do not have a firm opinion what will be the best. I mean, perhaps there is no actually one fits all type of a thing. So it's also part of the culture and operations and business of each of the companies to see how it's best arranged and organized.
Yeah, that's a great comment. And to share a story again here, because I'm involved a lot of in this code of conduct development in organizations. I think I've recently had a many interesting conversation on how you talk about sustainability inside the code of conduct, because in the past many companies have had their own subtitle, the subtopic, like sustainability as a one small tiny element of the code of conduct. And I think it's interesting question, why would that be there as a one separate isolated topic, and how you define in the introductory part the ethics, compliance, sustainability, because I think defining this makes a sense and is important for the organization also to learn when they are dealing with the ethics and compliance initiatives and the sustainabilities. And like Markus, you said, we do have the common goal. And personally, I don't think this would I would not merge this function for one particular region, which is that I think that ethics and compliance teams and they are really excellent in really governing the whole ethics and compliance team, meaning how we define policies, how we implement the whistleblowing systems and do the investigations, because this is something that the sustainability field will need more and more all the time, and there we can be the best friends. Right. Great. Any reflections from the audience at this point? Before going to my final topic, which is, I think we're going to stay late here because the final topic is really the future of ethics and compliance, and how we make ourselves relevant in this world that we have discussed today here with all of the evolvement around us. So what would be kind of your thoughts on how do we stay relevant and act as strategic partners in our organizations?
No, this is tough.
Yeah.
I think I think we need to be forward-looking, basically trying to anticipate where the world is going. And there, I think the technological shift is moving towards this sort of making the trainings more modular, making more focused on the individual, shifting the risk towards real time from a kind of historical and utilizing the technology, releasing some of your time, hopefully, then for more of this strategic alignment with and be really the business advisor, taking some of the manual work out of your schedule, basically. So that's at least my hope, and also to embrace this with courage and staying, basically remaining the human in the loop. I think is the important part.
I love that. Anything to add, Barbara?
Not that much actually. I fully agree with that. Forward-looking, open-minded, being willing to develop and see where the profession is evolving, and then kind of keeping in mind the need for human judgment. So there's also a reason why us as ethics and compliance professionals, why we've chosen this profession. And profoundly, I believe that we all want to promote the kind of the justice in the society and in the companies and corporate world. So even if the kind of now the pressure is to concentrate on the regulation, there will be times, and especially I think the times are actually now when financially companies are under a lot of pressure, and there's also risk that pressure brings with it, that people make unethical decisions. So that hasn't disappeared anywhere, the need for ethics. So like I said before, so if there is a kind of pressure and now you need to concentrate on the regulatory stuff, do that, but kind of keep your core values clear and do not forget the ethics.
Yeah.
I had an additional kind of thought that Nina, you mentioned at the outset that this sort of we may not have a kind of a consistent view on what is ethics globally anymore. I don't know if it was there previously ever, but at least there was the kind of a assumption that we have this sort of same view what is ethics. So maybe if you feel that there is a pressure in the organization on focusing solely on the minimum and away from the ethics, still the core values are important for the company. So maybe there's a good to have an exercise that really thinking that what are the values that are important for your specific company, not kind of trying to meet this on a general, and then focus on those as a kind of driving force.
Yeah, there is small hearts falling from my head because I love your comments. What can you say, Salla, to conclude this future of ethics and compliance?
Yeah, perhaps I have a bit of course, a different view as a kind of an external counsel, and I thank you for your insights on that. Of course, for us, it is important that we know as legal counsels, we know the regulation and understand kind of how can we help them implementing the kind of the framework which kind of combines the regulation with the kind of the ethical principles, and I would once again perhaps emphasize the role of good governance. I think it really goes back there in the companies that it's understood that and the kind of the need for good governance and how the company is driven from that sense. And also the kind of the boards and senior managements working as or being role models in a kind of everyday life. I think that's really important, and where you can really show how things are wanted to be done within your business. I mean, it's becomes a bit of an artificial if you have all these wonderful compliance frameworks in place, but then actually you don't really carry it in practice. Yeah, so it's really only one step done and not fully. So I would kind of look after good governance and good management in that sense.
Maybe just to kind of add to that what came to my mind. So maybe it's time to go back to the good old scandal headlines. Just reminding the management that when has doing the bare minimum been enough if something actually goes wrong ever.
Wow. I hate those headline things, but maybe.
And maybe dig a bit deeper into the reasoning on how things have gone wrong and why.
That's true, because if still today when we look at the scandals, it's like 1% that are made because of purely breaking some law, and then the other 99 is like something more on the gray zone. Excellent. So thank you for sharing all these thoughts. The time is we still have a little bit of time for a question if we have from the audience or from the line. Yes.
Yeah, good morning. I'm Nina Ganimo from DLA. Firstly, thank you for a very interesting discussion from the panel and Nina. I have a question goes back to the resources. Do you have any idea overall or maybe figures if you compare the resources that corporates put on these issues in Nordics compared with Europe and US? I think this also shows the importance of these questions compared with these countries.
This is an excellent questions regarding the comparison. How do Nordic compare against others? I don't have exact numbers here, but I suggest you discuss with our sponsor LRN Denny, who's sitting there behind. I'm sure he has a very good insights to share beyond the Nordics. So let's continue that conversation after we have concluded this official part. But very good question. I want to join that conversation as well. Any other good questions? Then we are, if not, then we are ready for my final question to you. So I would like to ask all of you to kind of share the one key thing you would want to say to this audience. We have a lot of people working with ethics and compliance here today, and I'm sure they have got great insights and inspiration, as at least I have from out of this conversation. But one thing to keep on mind and to go with when continuing on this path towards more responsible business and organizations.
Do you want to go first?
That's
I'm
always
sure. I
a
think I
question.
pretty much said what I wanted to say. So kind of don't forget about the ethics. That's at the end of the day what responsible business conduct is all about. And the pressures are there, but I do believe that when times are financially hard, people are then in positions where the pressure gets really heavy, both to meet the financially the targets at work. There might be pressures from personal life. There could be all sorts of pressures in the organization, in the worst case management by fear, all these type of situations that can lead to really, really bad situations. So I think now more than ever, we need ethical leadership.
Yeah, I can only echo that. I think definitely personally, I think ethics and compliance goes hand in hand. Maybe compliance is kind of taking care of the kind of mitigating the risk today, whereas kind of ethics are then and values are protecting our companies in the future. And we need to remember that, take care also of the future. So.
I would say that in terms of the kind of the regulatory tsunami is a new normal, and I don't think that we can really avoid it, even though there are good initiatives, at least in the EU. But I mean, it's a global matter. It's not just an EU matter as such. And then I would think that even if it's difficult, it's hard, it takes time, it's all that. I guess going back to basics is the one which helps with that, and once again going back to why are we doing this compliance function, and taking it back to this value-driven concept of business. So then I think it makes the work a bit at least easier.
Thank you, Salla. Thank you, Markus, and thank you, Tarja. Those were, no better words could be come up here to summarize this conversation. Thank you, everyone who has participated today online and here in Helsinki. And once again, thank you, everyone who has contributed to our survey. So you can now find the survey in your inbox, in your mail. We hope that the results and insights will provide you some meaningful information that will help you in developing your programs and having meaningful conversations within your organization and within the other ethics and compliance and sustainability professionals. If you have any insights you want to share with myself, Anna, or Sanna, we here at the Nordic Business Ethics are here for you. Just send us a message and let's have a coffee and continue the conversation around these topics. Thank you.